Hey guys, what's up? Just kind of back with another kind of like weekly deck update slash tournament report that I usually kind of do on Mondays. Last Monday I didn't get to do a video, but I did go to a tournament, and I also went to one today. Today being Labor Day, and yeah, I'll kind of talk about some of my results and a few small changes I made to the deck and the side deck is the I guess the side deck's the main thing I want to talk about. Anyways, let's jump into the profile. Should be real quick. Not much has changed. I managed to pick up some um, Zendikar Rising fetch lands, so my deck is starting to get to the point where almost everything is hollowed out. Not to brag or anything, but yeah, it's just I really like how the deck has kind of come together in terms of like aesthetic. I think it looks really nice. I do get all compliments on the deck when I do play at locals. Um, Most people haven't seen the arts for the cards I've played, or they think the arts are very nice or pretty, which is the reason why I kind of play the deck because I really like the fact that a lot of the arts in the deck are kind of like really nice. Fairly expensive, yes, but I do just kind of enjoy collecting these particular cards, and they're kind of like for my personal collection, anyways. But yeah, let's go and just kind of talk about it real quick. So I'll break it down by mana base, so in case makes it a little bit more easily consumed. So two world March of the Owl really like. I tried Fatal Pushes, I ended up not liking them. The marches certainly were able to one take care of some enchantments and artifacts that were kind of annoying, which Fatal Push obviously can't do. Um, does cost more mana most of the time. Can't kill Ragavan on turn one, unfortunately, but for the most part, like if you really need to kill a Ragavan, you can lose a card in your hand, which is kind of the same idea behind a Solitude, anyways. So yeah, so I like the marches. Tried to Fatal Pushes, didn't like them that much. Found this I was able to kind of remove Blood Moons, Urza Sagas, stuff like that. So it's niche, but it does have its uses. And there are times where there's something that's really big, like kind of like late game, like your opponent has like I don't know, a Fury or a Solitude, or maybe something bigger. Yeah, whatever it is. Sometimes late game when you have a ton of mana, you could start casting this for like 6 or 7 mana, and just to like you lose out on mana temple, but you kill like a Fury, a Solitude, which is nice, um, or something else. Anyways, that's my thoughts on March, and ever since its inception into the deck, I've kind of liked it. I think 2 is a good number. Any more than that, I feel like it might be a little too clunky or too expensive to play. Then our best removal in the deck for Prismatic Ending, without a question. In the deck, you can easily do Prismatic Ending for 4. I think 4 is a sweet spot. You can kill Omnath, you can kill Jace, just a bunch of things. Usually you're hitting 2 to 3 mana, but sometimes, yeah, the 4 mana does come up. 5th mana sometimes does come up, like sometimes you want to kill a Solitude or Fury, or like a big mana Teferi. Generally that doesn't come up. Maybe late game it does, but at that point I don't want to get have my mana base be more greedier than it already is, and so I leave it at X 4 color Converge. I think is generally good enough. 4 opts, still like this as my cantrip. Puts away lands that I might not need for now, or puts away my threats later. You could play Consider. Consider works better with Snapcaster in some sense, but Opt overall allows me to play less lands and allows me to kind of not flood out as much and stuff like that. So it helps. I definitely like the 4 cantrips in the deck. So you're effectively playing 56 cards with 24 lands. So I think that's a pretty decent number going forward. Oh, this is my side deck. Let me go ahead and grab my 2 CMC spells. 2 dams. I still like dams worked well. Turn 2, kill a Ragavan. Turn or whatever might be a threat on turn 2. If not, I just overload. A couple occasions, sometimes the uncounterable nature of Supreme Verdict might be good, but it's very few. The only time I ever come across that is if I'm playing against maybe Affinity and they have man up for like improvise or something like that, or maybe like a spirit or something. Generally, spirits don't seem to play too many counter spells. Their creatures themselves have, that counter thingy, but generally you can kill those creatures with like a prismatic ending. Um, they both Supreme Verdict and Damn still lose to a well placed spell queller. So I mean, it's the same idea. Not too many decks are playing counter spells to counter Damn. Maybe the biggest one would possibly be Murktide or something like that. But it's not too bad. I mean, if you're gonna kill Murktide for 2 mana, it's not bad. You know, so whatever's. Next off, for counter spells, for the best card in control that we have. The only card that can be better than this could be maybe Mana Drain if we ever get that in in Modern, which I don't think we would ever get Mana Drain in Modern. Definitely better than Mana Leak, and I personally like Memory Lapse. If we ever get Memory Lapse in Modern, that would be kind of cool, and that card would be pretty annoying to deal with. Okay, and then last off for 2 CMC Snapcasters, 4 of them. I tried 3, didn't like it as much, and 4 just kind of has carried my kind of like the best engine in the deck for like late game purposes. Like today, I played against 4-color Omnath, and I think Snapcaster just carried me to victory against them. Just being able to just reuse my spells and put a body on board. It's like their equivalent of a Quaddle or Belful Strix. It's just like that. If you gotta play the 1 mana cantrips plus snaps is pretty good. If not, if you're on 2 mana and they Ragavan dash Ragavan, you could just snap out, block the Ragavan. So it's like, it's never a bad card, I think. It definitely is slower, definitely is sometimes a little clunky to use. You definitely need mana in order to use Snapcaster effectively, and obviously your graveyard. Majority of the time, most people aren't going to side graveyard hate against you. The only graveyard hate I maybe have encountered is Endurance at best. And that's really it. If they're playing Rest in Peace or they're playing like Relic of Genesis or something, Relic they might Relic Relic of Genesis off of a Karn, or if they're playing Hammer Time or Affinity, they might search it off of Urza Saga. But outside of that, like Snapcaster, whenever I cast it, it has always kind of paid for itself, and either as an effective sometimes 3-for-1 or 2-for-1, or 1-for-1 or 3-for-1. Sometimes it's just that good. I definitely liked it in any sort of blue-white control deck that you do play. In my opinion, one of the better creatures that you can play. Next off, for 3 mana, 2 Kai's Guile. Still great. There's still a lot of matchups where you play Kaya and you just kind of win the game. Being able to interact with their graveyard is really, really good, and it oftentimes catches people off, catches them by surprise. And occasionally you'll kill like a good big creature or something like that for the Edict effect. But most of the time, you're usually sacrificing, exiling graveyard. Sometimes you'll heal, sometimes you'll make a 1/1 or something like that. But overall, a really good multi-purpose card. Not much to say about it. It's the reason why I splash black, I think, is for this 1 card here. And then 3 Teferi. I do side the 4th one. I think 3 main deck has been pretty good. I like 3. Because you're playing more of a Snapcaster build, so you generally don't want to tap out. So Teferi, Time Raveler forces you to tap out, and if you draw multiple of them in hand, they're kind of dead. More dead than Snapcasters, at least from when I do play. So I like Teferi at 3. Still a good card against a lot of matchups, sometimes really bad against certain matchups. But overall, I think at least seeing 1 per game is generally good enough. Maybe 2 for redundancy. You don't need to see him. I'd rather see Snapcaster. I'd rather be able to recast my spells in my graveyard and put a body on board and as a win con. I guess that's the issue with this particular Teferi is that he can't act as a win con. He'll never win you the game in terms of like damage or anything. He'll win you the game in terms of if you're playing against another deck that has a lot of interaction, you can just shut them down, which will in turn win you the game. But a majority of the time against decks that may not even play any sort of interaction, he's kind of dead. So I think the 3's been what I've liked. And then our best counter spell draw card in the deck is Archmage's Charm. This plus Snapcaster is probably one of the best plays you can do. Snap Flashback Archmage's Charm allows you to just essentially draw a bunch of cards. Sorry, my mic was a little out. If I'm not sure how my voice is gonna appear in the video, but I just fixed my mic right here. I didn't realize it was sitting a little bit further away from my face than I like. But anyways, yeah, Archmage's Charm. We usually always have mana for it in this deck. There's maybe 2 out of like 10 games where I don't have triple blue for Archmage's Charm by turn 3. Either I'm missing land drops or maybe I'm drawing like a plains and something else. But otherwise, all my lands in my deck give blue mana except for plains. So majority of the time, you should be able to cast Archmage's Charm without any real issues. I'll keep grabbing my side deck because I keep thinking it's what I want to do next, but it's not. Yeah, then some of our win conditions here. You can cut Jace or you can cut one Emperor. I definitely recommend at least one Emperor in your deck. This card alone has won me a lot of games, especially when the clock is ticking. It's your best way to kind of push for damage and go wide. The thing with Emperor is you never really want to build tall, so you never really want to uptick her as much. I always go flash end step, make a dude, and then my turn make another guy. You almost never want to play the Emperor during your turn, unless you know you're just winning regardless. The only time you play Emperor during your turn is maybe if they're tapped out, if you're playing against a control deck, or maybe you have 5 mana Teferi and you just want to make use of the mana. Then yes, you can Emperor on your turn, but I highly recommend never really Emperoring on your turn. Like her flash is what makes her really playable. If she didn't have flash, I don't think she'd see any play at all in a control deck. But yeah, her flash ability, her ability to be used as kind of like a solitude to exile a creature, to make your board go wide, really good. Jace is one of those cards that sometimes I resolve and it goes unanswered, and that's how I just win the game. So that's been my experience with Jace, honestly. Like, he's not that great of a planeswalker. He gets bolted, unholy heat. It's hard to defend him. He can barely defend himself. But there's just points in the game where you know your opponent can't stop the Jace, or they just don't have a good way to remove the Jace. Maybe you slap down the Jace, you brainstorm, and you just kind of brainstorm until you have a good enough hand and they can't come back from it, and that's how you win. So that's my experience with Jace. That's why I still like to include him. I maybe won using his ult maybe once or twice in like the entire year I've played this deck. So him as a win condition using his ult rarely happens. Maybe it's my play style. I don't really like to fate seal people unless I'm so ahead I don't need to draw any more cards. But I find that it's probably better to ult the 5 mana Teferi and then use Jace to kind of exile 3 cards from your opponent's field. That's probably the better win con, rather than try to fate seal with Jace, because that shit never really happens. So yeah. Yeah, namesake of the deck, 2 big Teferis, and yeah, he's like, if you resolve big Teferi or resolve Jace and they don't answer it, this can quickly win you the game in terms of just resource. It won't win you the game in terms of like life, but you can definitely start grinding out your opponent really quickly through the sheer amount of cards you'll be drawing. I usually have Jace and Teferi on the board. I usually just keep brainstorming with Jace, upticking with Teferi until I can ult with him. I actually won a match today. I did end up ulting Teferi, but it didn't really matter because I had so much resources ahead of my opponent that it didn't really matter that I ulted with Teferi. But yeah, I play 2 for redundancy. 3, I find that you open it up with a lot in your hand sometimes, and then it clogs your hand, especially if you're playing so many other planeswalkers. You're playing the baby Teferi plus these, so you only really need to see one of these in your hands or late game, and you're fine. You don't really need too many Teferis, too many big mana Teferis. Um, he's just there to kind of act as a secondary win condition. He's mostly just obviously a resource generator. Same thing with Jace. What's gonna win you the game, typically, in my experience, has been the Wandering Emperor or a bunch of Snapcasters on the board, or a Solitude that resolves unanswered, or your opponent doesn't remove it. So that's how I won most of my games, is just through creatures. Once I can stabilize, my opponent's resources are down, I can just start pumping out a bunch of creatures, and then just attack them until their life total goes to 0. But yeah, that's how I typically play the deck. Oh yeah, and I also play 2 Solitudes. I've liked 2 Solitudes. I don't think I'd like any more than that. Um, Sometimes it can be kind of dead. Sometimes, I don't know. I feel like I have enough removal that I don't need more than 2. Maybe a 3rd copy might be nice, but generally I find 2 is good enough. I'll pitch it. I'll invoke it when I really, really, really have to. Majority of the time, I actually hard cast Solitude as a win condition for my decks, and to kind of help gain some life there. So yeah, I think 2's been good for me. All right, so next off, we're gonna move towards the mana base. The mana base has been basically the same since almost 6 months ago. I made one small change to the mana base that I'll talk about in a second, but outside of that, I really like the mana base. 24 lands been working out pretty well for me. I did get a little land screwed the first game I played today, but majority of the games I've played, my mana base has worked well, has given me the colors I needed, has given me the lands I needed during those turns, and with the amount of fetches and shocks and stuff, I actually haven't really dealt too much damage to myself in terms of like that. And I have you thin your land out using the fetch land, which is nice. You have a lot of one of lands in here. I mean, overall, I think the mana base, maybe 1 or 2 small improvements here or there, but I think it's a pretty solid mana base for how long I've played the deck, and for at least the cards I have in my deck, and they work really well. The man lands can act as their own win conditions, which has been pretty nice also. And yeah, just overall, I like the mana base. And it works well against Blood Moon too. Like, I've won a lot of games where my opponents have resolved Blood Moons against me, and I still won those games. And it supports Prismatic Ending up to 4, which is really nice. And yeah, this is my preference so far, and I don't think I'm gonna make any more changes to the mana base. It's been pretty solid for me. Okay, let's talk about it real quick. So 2 man lands. Yeah, kind of like one of those things where you get one, and that's all you really need. Haul to clock people faster, especially if they have no cards on the board to block with. That's when you haul people. Celestial, great blocker, flies over things, beats people down. So yeah, I'd recommend one of each, because they each serve kind of different purposes, and they're a huge target for Boseiju. Like, I've gotten Boseiju a bunch of times. And when I've gotten Boseiju, it's like they're just sitting in my land, and I haven't really even activated it yet. So like, it's fine if they want to Boseiju this. It's not bad. You can just tap it for mana and then get another land from your deck. So, but yeah, overall, like these 2 man lands. You could maybe play the white one, the one that becomes a 3/4 dragon. But I mean, at that point, I'd rather have Celestial Colony over that dragon. Celestial Colony is bigger, and even though it's a little bit more expensive to use, has got Vigilance, which is kind of nice, But yeah, that's my opinion there. Unfortunately, it always comes in tap, but it does give you two different colors, which is nice. So those are the trade-offs there. Um, yeah, and also I guess on that same topic, if you play the white man land, it gives you white mana, which you don't really want in the early game anyways, because then if you go the white dragon whatever, you won't be able to Archmage on turn 3. So um, yeah, just something else, another food for thought. Okay, and then next off, here you go. I finally got some of the nicer um, fetch lands. Sorry, I kind of lost my train of thoughts there. Yeah, these are definitely really nice. They are not my favorite. My favorite are the original Zendikar fetches, expedition lands. But I'm not really wanting to pay $200 to $300 per land. But I do definitely like these. I could have waited for maybe like Modern Masters 3 or something like that. They'll come with like maybe the borderless or the extended lands, kind of like how Modern Masters 2 did for the ally lands. I think ally or enemy lands. I forget my terminology there, but I am just selling with these rising lands, and yeah, they're kind of nice. The foiling is a little more muted on them. They definitely got more of a gray tone foiling. Like I don't know how to really explain it. Like I'll show you the other four here. The other four is the polluted delta over here. Let me show this over there. Yeah, but the polluted deltas they got like a more of a gray hollow shine to them. So they definitely look a little bit different in person. But I mean overall I like them. They kind of match the theme of the deck since I have been using this guy, the Expedition Land Celestial Colonnade, for so long. I might as well get some that match up with them. And I do like the borders. The borders aren't bad. They're definitely more subtle than the original Expedition lands. In which case, I do have some original Expedition lands. I finally upgraded my what should you call it? Filter lands. So I do have these. These look pretty nice too. So these ones are the Mystic Gates and Sunken Ruins. Quite pricey for each of them, but I definitely like them. I like their hauling a lot better. It's more of a brilliant color compared to like the more like muted, darker like color of the Rising lands. So they definitely look nice. The borders are nice also, and the artwork is definitely my favorite. This Mystic Gate looks a lot better than the OG Mystic Gate. The OG Mystic Gate, I absolutely hate the artwork on it. Sunken Ruins artwork is nice in both versions, but definitely the Sunken Ruins are nice in or the Expedition Sunken Ruin artwork is really nice. So yeah, I got these. I ended up trading a bunch of my old stuff in, and then paying a little bit of money to kind of get these particular lands. They were pretty pricey, but I think they're kind of really cool and kind of like very collectible, I guess. Granted, since I'm playing with them, they may not stay in near mint conditions anymore. They might end up being like LP or something, which is fine. It's I meant to buy the cards to play with, and yeah, so I don't mind if they get a little scruff up there from me playing. And then for like our name lands, the lands that we're gonna fetch off of our trinome, or sorry, our fetch lands, gonna be the one tower. You almost always fetch this first if you can. Sometimes I don't. If I have like an opt in hand, sometimes I'll fetch like an island or maybe a shock land or something. It's just to opt. But yeah, I would say 80% of the time you'll fetch the trinome. Get it out of the way. It's a tap land. You want to get it out of the way. It gives you all the 3 colors you need. It gives you potential to be able to dam on turn 2. You have if you have 2 fetch lands, you can almost always dam on turn 2 and still have white mana. So you go tower, and then watery graves, and then you can dam something on turn 2 if you really needed to. If not, just tower into a second hollow fountain is generally pretty nice, because a lot of the once you reach 4 mana and higher, most of your cards are two whites. So that's sometimes fetching this is good. But yeah, let me show you the shock lands then. So I'm playing a total of 5 shock lands. Main reason why I'm doing so is just redundancy. 2 hollows for sure you need. You can argue that you can play just 1 watery graves, but I've liked 2 in case there's sometimes I can't fetch the trinome or the trinome's in my hand or something, and I need immediate black for some action. That's why I like two watery graves and 2 fountains. And finally, our fifth shock lands is a steam vent. This is here for prismatic ending, and that's it. And the gates will help you turn this. So the filter lands help you turn steam vents and like your islands and this dude. Or sorry, the Hall of the Storm Giant, the blue man only. It helps you turn those mono blue lands for different colors. So color fixing, which is really nice with the Mystic Gates and the Sunken Ruins. So I don't feel bad about playing a ton of mono blue color lands, because regardless, I can always fix them with the filter lands. And then these are great for fetching. And then finally, the basics here. I made one change. I took out Swamp completely. Swamp was probably the worst land in my deck for the longest time, and I always felt it that way. But I guess I was in the mindset of always being worried I need a black for against Blood Moon. Found out that I didn't really need that. I needed plains more than a swamp. If I can get a plains or an island in before Blood Moon comes in, I can always remove Blood Moon with Prismatic Ending. Or I can either gust it away. Either way, these are the lands they're gonna be fetching for. Rarely have I ever did like Delta fetch it for a swamp, so I end up just thinking this should be fine. In terms of like your fetch lands, sorry if I'm starting a lot. I'm trying to think about what I'm going. What point I'm trying to make here. Sorry. So the Flooded Strands are for sure you want to play a 4 of for the deck. Now for the because we're not playing a swamp anymore, the next 4 fetch lands can be anything that fetches blue. So you can do Misty Forest and you can do Scarring Tarns instead. You may want to break it up a little bit. Reason why is if you break up these lands, you play like a Scarring Tarns or Misty Rainforest, it can hide some information about what deck you're playing. And I guess if you're playing against a mill deck or a deck that's playing Surgical Extraction, you can make yourself a little less weak to Surgical Extraction by not just doubling up on the land. So because I removed the swamp, I think these don't need to be polluted deltas. They can honestly be like 4 Scarring Tarns. They can be Misty Rainforest. They could be polluted delta or a mixture, one of each. But I kind of have OCD, so YOLO. I kind of just stuck with the 4/4 that I've been playing for so long. And maybe if the meta changes or something that requires me to put in more black mana, I think I'm set here in terms of like my Esper mana base. So those are my lands for now. Now, once October comes out and Infinity comes out, I plan on kind of getting the Infinity lands. So those are gonna look really nice. I think I'm gonna get 3 islands, 2 plains, and then the shock lands. Those will be my final pieces of this particular deck that I'm gonna foil out. But yeah, I think those fetch lands and those the filter lands have been a really nice addition to the deck in terms of just how they look, in terms of their art. So yeah, that's it for the main deck. And then let's go through the side deck, is where I kind of want to talk about the most, and some changes I made to it, and my thoughts going forward from it. So the main change I made to it is I did end up adding 2 Chalice of the Void to the deck. Now Chalice of the Void, for the longest time I kind of have a hate love relationship with it. I was kind of against playing it. I didn't think you really needed it, and still to this day, I don't really think you need it, especially in the main deck. For me, I don't like just challenging for 0 or 1, not knowing what I'm playing against. I'd rather play like the opt and stuff like that. Play a solid, consistent game 1, and then game 2 I can take out the dead cards and stuff like that, and then put in more hate cards, put in more floodgates and stuff like that. Which is why I have 2 chalice here. Now for chalice, I always go 1 or 0. You never want to do anything higher than that. And a majority of the meta has a lot of 1 mana stuff, so you're playing against Grixis Death Shadow, Murktide, Yawgmoth, even Hammer Time, Affinity. Yeah, they have a lot of 1 mana cards, and this card is it's not meant to like completely shut them down. It's just meant to kind of slow them down, make their hands really awkward to play. While hopefully you can draw some some counter spells. You can draw some removal, some threats. So it's there to buy you time. It's a card that's gonna probably die most of the time. It's gonna die to like a Boseiju, die to Prismatic Ending. There's a ton of ways to remove Chalice, so it's not one of those cards that's gonna stick on the board and stay there permanently, from my experience at least. And so it's just there to kind of be like a plan B, I guess, against some decks, and to buy you time so that you can set up your game plan and hose them in the meantime. The only card affected by Challenge of the Void in this particular deck is Opt. You have Prismatic Ending and March, both also which I like because they're X spells, so you can pay whatever mana you want into them, and on the stack they're gonna be whatever that mana is. So if you go, March for 2 or Prismatic Ending for 2, you can dodge the Chalice trigger. So that's one way. I prefer those as the premier removal because they can work under the chalices that you might play in either the side or the main deck. Like I said, for me personally, I like the chalices in the side. Now you can play 3 if you really wanted to. I think 3 is a lot too much. I think sometimes you open up with too many of them, or you just for me it's like I either see it, cool, maybe a second copy for redundancy, or I don't see it and just play like a normal game. So yeah, that's the change I made for my side deck. I ended up taking out, I think it was the Gus card, I forgot what it was. Not Aether Gus, but I think Fracturing Gus, because I never end up using it. It was 5 mana. It's pretty expensive. It's instant speed and it does heal you, but it's kind of slow. So I ended up just taking that out, and I took out 1 Kaz Guile, just because I think 4 is a lot. I have always liked 4. Maybe there's an argument for me to go ahead and just put it back in, but yeah, for now I've done kind of trying to make my deck jack of all trades rather than a master of one, I guess. Because back then when Loris was around, a majority of my deck was just made for anti-grave hate, and it still kind of is, but yeah. So Chalice, decent card. I guess on to the next point here. I forgot that the other card that can be affected by Chalice is also my Spell Bomb. It's not the worst, I guess. So Spell Bomb is just kind of a backup plan. So they're both backup plans. So like most of the time, if you're siding in Spell Bomb, you're putting it in with Chalice. You're probably playing against a Living End deck, so they don't conflict with each other. Rarely do you put both in. Maybe against like a Murktide deck or something like that, and you Chalice for 1. I maybe side in maybe 1 or 2 Spell Bombs against them, just so I can hit their the Delirium or something like that. But their Delirium's not too super necessary, or try to hit them so that they can't play the Murktide. But I think that's the only situation where I think they may conflict, is when you're playing against Murktide specifically. Against every other matchup, You usually go 0 and you should be fine on 1, because that's living end. Against Rhino, I would not side in Spellbomb, or against maybe the Grixis Death Shadow, I might side in Spellbomb and the Chalice, but at that point, Spellbomb's not super duper useful against Death Shadow, since you only have to worry about Delirium for for the Chandler and for the Unholy Heat, so might not even side in the Spellbomb at that point. And then Aethergust, still real MVP of the deck, in terms of like playing against green decks, playing against Caverns decks, stuff like that, playing around Veil of Summers. So overall, just a powerhouse of a hate card for red and green. Red and green being probably the two most popular colors that you'll see in every deck. Every like meta deck has either red or green in it. And so Aethergust has just been pretty good against those decks. Especially against Omnath, Titan, Murktide even. What else? Death Shadow sometimes. It's your best answer to a Resolved Blood Moon. Good answer to Magnus of the Moon. Stuff like that. So yeah, overall, just a great card. It's also good against Fury. If you have a hard time dealing with Fury, this card is bonker against the Fury. Especially if they invoke the Fury, you just have them spin it back and they just like lose a card and they have to draw the same card again. Blah blah blah. Yeah. Veto's great against Rhinos. Definitely you want them against Rhinos. If they try to outburst you during your end turn, you want a veto so they can't force negation it. But yeah, Rhinos is Veto is good against Rhinos, good against other control match. Overall, good against just spell heavy base decks or combo decks, and other control decks. And then I guess the 3 1-ofs I got here. This is my 4th copy of Teferi in this side. Good against, this when I side him in, I side him in against other control decks. Sided him in against any Cascade decks. Those are the primary times I sided a 4th copy in. I think that is the only time. Another Kai Guild, so this is my 3rd Kai's Guild. And then Void Ren. I don't know. It's worked sometimes, which is fine. I played against Wilderness Rec, but in general, my deck is just really bad against Wilderness Rec. Wilderness Rec is just a hard deck to play against, especially when you have so much mana open. It's like you can only counter so much. Then playing like Memory Deluges left and right. So, Void Ren is just there to mainly hit stuff that they might try to protect, like a Blood Moon, hit other Teferis maybe, something that's like if you feel like they have a counter spell, you just want to Void Ren it. And it's for 3 mana to kill anything is pretty efficient, I guess. Not as efficient as 2 mana or 1 mana, but it's about the same price that you're paying for Prismatic Ending and March for the most part. So Void Ren at 1 is not bad. And then kind of the final cards in my deck. Another Board Wipe, Supreme Verdict. Great against other blue decks if they are playing Counterspell. That's when I side them in. And then Salty, just an overall powerhouse too. Won me a bunch of games against Omnath decks. Wins me games against whatchamacallit, the other control decks with trying to fairy and stuff like that. So yeah, I think Salty's been really good. Like I almost want to play 4 of him. But yeah, the 2-2 split has been working well for me. 2 Salty, 2 Solitudes. Grief you don't need in the deck, but the flash nature of Salty, the flash nature of Solitudes have been work really well. So that's the changes for the main deck. And then let me speak quickly about my matchups from last week and yesterday, or I guess today, without trying to go too much longer. I think the video is almost like 40 minutes long already. So last week I played against Affinity. What was it? Affinity deck. Man. Oh, Affinity. The combo deck. I think yeah, combo deck. Oh, okay. So it was Affinity, Glimpse. I think it was another Glimpse deck, Glimpse of Tomorrow, and Seismic Assault deck. So um, I won, and then the final game I kind of just split with my opponent. So four rounds. I ended up being top, got like second or third place. But basically, I did lose to Affinity. Affinity went on to win the tournament, the locals. But I beat Seismic Assault. I beat the Glimpse of Tomorrow deck, and the fourth game we didn't really even play. But yeah, like and I think the fourth deck was, or maybe it was the Seismic. I don't quite remember because it's about a week ago. But I think Affinity has been. It's been kind of like a 50-50 matchup. I think I have a better matchup against Hammer Time than I do against Infinity, because Infinity plays those counter spells sometimes that would get you, and they made their stuff really big, and they had Trample. I think I just misplayed a lot against Infinity. I need more practice against them. Early on in my, like, when I played Esper at my other locals that was close to my home, they had a couple Infinity players. I played against them. I did fine. But lately, I guess I haven't had enough practice against them, and I think I just misplayed a lot and end up just getting too old by an Affinity player, and that felt kind of bad. But I think I'm just gonna chuck it down to me just misplaying a lot. There's a lot of points during that game where it was just in my favor. Then I think I made the wrong decision, which then ended up flipping it into his favor, and he just ended up killing me with like a giant creature with trample. So I think it's just I was being either overly cautious or just unprepared. For whatever reason is, Affinity has been kind of difficult for me. So that was last week. Today, Memorial Day, so not many people came. Last week we had about 24, 26 players. Today we had about 12 players. I think it's the holidays. No one was really, going to play Magic on Labor Day. So, but it was 3 rounds today, and I don't know what place I got, but I did lose one game. I think I ended up getting 4th or 5th place somewhere there. I won 2 games and lost 1 game. So I played against Belcher Combo, played against 4-color Omnath, Yorion, and I played against Wilderness Rec. Now this Wilderness Rec was a different player, but Wilderness Rec I think has just been really difficult for me to play against. Then again, during those games that we did play, I ended up losing 2-0 to the Wilderness Rec deck, but it was rough. It's hard to say what lost me the game. I think it was just me not drawing my lands, and him just being able to get his land out and winning the counterspell wars. I'm just gonna go ahead and say that, because he was able to resolve Wilderness Rec. I could never resolve any of my Teferis, and I just was not on mana. Like, I think 10, I don't know, maybe 8 turns in the game, I only had 4 lands. For some reason, I was just not drawing any lands, and I was just stuck on playing maybe 1 or 2 spells a turn or something like that. And he was just able to resolve his Wilderness Rec, have like 20, a million mana during the end phase, Memory Deluge a million times, and I think that just kind of got away from me. I almost got it during game 2, but there was a critical juncture where I made a mistake and just lost the game from there. But yeah, Wilderness Rec, I think I just need more practice against that deck, because I haven't beaten a Wilderness Rec deck in a while. And I've only played against 2 in the last like maybe 2 months. But each time I played against them, it felt really, really one-sided. Like, Wilderness Rec is great. It's a great deck to play against fair Magic players, I guess. What I mean by fair Magic is that, like my deck, we're spending mana to play spells, where like unfair decks are like Cascade decks, where they're kind of cheating out spells, cheating out certain things. So Wilderness Rec probably has a worse matchup against those particular decks, because they can't really deal with a board full of creatures, or a bunch of rhinos, or whatever, because their deck is a lot quicker. But against my deck, where they can establish a Wilderness Rec and then have like 8 mana to spend to cast whatever spell they want on their turn, and then have like 8 mana open on my turn. It's just too difficult for me to play against. And yes, if I could resolve it to Fairy, I probably would win. But during that match, I just couldn't resolve it, and I just didn't have the mana up to fight the counterspell war, and I just ended up um, losing there. So unfortunate, but it happens, and I think I just need more practice against the Wilderness deck. Um, Belcher combo, I went 2-1 there. Uh, First game, um, I had a bunch of counter spells. Second game, he comboed off on turn 3 or something like that, and I just didn't have well, I had a counter up, but he had Veil of Summers, and he just killed me. So couldn't really do anything game 2, but game 3, I just once again had enough answers, and he just couldn't answer all of my answers, I guess. So it wasn't too bad. And then the final game was against 4-color Omnath. Game 1 was, I want to say, was really swingy in my favor for some reason. Maybe he didn't draw any like cards, or maybe he was flooding out. I wasn't too sure, but I was able to establish 3 mana Teferi and establish my 5 mana Teferi eventually, and he was just not doing anything to kind of stop that. And I was just able to counter and block all of his stuff. He eventually even had to just try to flash into Solitude or play a Solitude on his turn just to try to put some damage in. But I think I'm just gonna say he just didn't have the right cards in his hand. Now game 2 was really long. For a while, I think towards the middle of the game, it swung in his favor. I was running out of steam. But then I just don't know how I was able to out his board and kind of just out certain things, and then I just swung back in my favor, and then suddenly now I have a Teferi. I had 2 Teferis and the Emperor on the board, and I was able to even ult the Teferi, the 5 mana Teferi, and kept it alive with 1 loyalty because I went to like 9 and ulted. He had, I don't know, 10 lands on board, 12 lands on board. I didn't think ulting the Fairy at 8 was going to win me the game, so I just like, you know what, I'm just going to draw more cards and then ult it, and then maybe I can eventually deal with his mana base. But yeah, the game took a while, but I was able to eventually just come out on top. The critical play, I think, was he resolved an Omnath by Prismatic Ending. He Furied. I think I bounced it back. He Furied again. To kill one of my baby Teferis, I bounced it back again. And he tries to cast another Fury, and then I was able to subtlety the Fury, and then there I was able to beat down his Ren and 6 with my subtlety, and I think that's how the game swung in my favor. It went from him having Fury, Omnath, and Ren and 6 all on board at the same time to him having nothing and me just eventually assembling my Planeswalker army and having like a million spells in the graveyard, or a million stuff in my graveyard for Snapcaster. I think I used up all 4 of my Archmage Charms. I used up all 4 of my counter spells. My graveyard was just loaded with stuff, and I think I used maybe 2 Snapcasters. So I had 2 more in my deck. I ended up drawing another one. Had a Solitude in my hand, and then had like some additional threats. But yeah, like it went on for a while. He used Ren and 6 to get back Boseiju a few times. He Boseijud my man land, so I effectively couldn't clock him fast enough with the man lands because they were just gone. So I was never really able to activate it, knowing that he had Boseiju in hand. And then he had so much mana that he was able to force negation my stuff, paying for the 3 mana force negation and stuff like that. And it was crazy. It was a long game, but I didn't expect to win the game too. I was expecting to lose it, but I ended up winning, and with like maybe 2 minutes to spare left on the clock. So yeah, so far I think Omnath has been a 50-40, or sorry, 60-40 game. I've beaten most of the 4-color Omnath decks I've played against so far. There's been a few that's been a little rough. But other than that, yeah, I've actually, while it's a bad matchup for me, in this particular way I've played my deck, I've had a good win rate against them. So I'm pretty set on the build against Omnath. In case you were curious as to what I boarded in against them, um, I'll show you real quickly here. I think, yeah, it's something like this. I think it's like 9 cards. My being control, you can you're really flexible. You can you can add in as many side cards as you want, and you won't dilute your strategy as much. Unlike Living End, they can't really overside. If they overside too much, they end up just diluting their strategy, and their deck gets worse. For control, it's better. Game 2 and 3, it's better for us because we can just take out all of our cards that are junk against them, put in all the hate cards and stuff like that. So for me, I put in doing this. So reasoning behind it, obviously, either because it's just like an MVP against elementals, subtlety against Brennan 6, whatever. He was playing Ragavan too, and I never let Ragavan hit me. So it always ended up dying to like a block Snapcaster or prismatic ending or something like that. So like subtlety and Idigus kind of serve the same purpose, to hold their creatures, play around Veil of Summers, play around the Caverns. Caverns I haven't seen a lot anymore. People used to play Caverns a lot, but I think Caverns is kind of out of the deck. So, but yeah, Teferi to kind of shut down their interaction because they do play counter spells, they do play force negations, stuff like that. So you want to have your own Teferi against them. They play Teferi also. Void Ren to kill Teferi, kill Ren in 6, uncounterable, or kill basically anything you want, and they can't counter it. Same thing with Doran Beetle. You want to stop their Teferis and their Ren in 6, maybe their expressive alliteration, counter their counter. That's the idea behind the Beetle here. Other than that, I think that's what a total of 9 cards. I think. What is this? 6? Yeah, 9 cards. So, and I took out maybe some dead cards. I took out like Dam, stuff like that. Cards I took out. I think a couple, 1 or 2 ops. I took out the ops because he was playing Ragavan, and I didn't want him to hit my ops, or have him having a high chance of hitting off of Ragavan in case. So I took out 2 ops there, and then yeah, I think overall, I didn't see any endurances, so I don't think he prioritized throwing endurance into to kind of shut down my grave for my Snapcasters. And I think if he did throw in endurance, I think it would just help me because I can just kind of recycle some of my stuff because I was running out of stuff too. I was running out of counter spells. I was running out of like draw cards, and I was actually, my deck was pretty thin. I think I had maybe 20 something cards left in my deck. But yeah, so I never saw endurance against me. So, but I did see the Furies and this Solitudes and Omnath. So these were all basically great against those. So yeah, I think I'm pretty confident in my matchup against 4-color control, even though it's blue white's control sports matchup. Pretty confident in most of the meta game. A couple of like I guess rogue decks like Affinity. Affinity's been pretty good lately though, so I might have to kind of prepare myself for that a little bit better. Same thing with Hammer Time. I don't get too much practice against Hammer Time, but I for the most part have won most of my matches against Hammer Time. And then Living End, my friend plays Living End. I have decent practice against Living End. I have decent practice against Rhinos. I've faced many Rhinos before, and it's been kind of 50-50 against them. Glimpse of Tomorrow, kind of wonky deck. I think it's the worst of the Cascade decks because it's more of a definitely more of a combo oriented deck more than even like Living End is. And for me, I think I can kind of play against them pretty well. So that I can't really say too much if I'm gonna prepare for them or not. What's the other one? Abominable Creativity I have not played against yet, so I would like to eventually play against that just to see how I do. I've heard a lot of things about that particular deck, but I'm a control deck, so I should be able to play against them just fine using counter spells and removal, not letting the Archon hit the board. So yeah. Anyways, I think that's it. Hope you guys enjoy, and I'll see you guys probably next week. See ya.